Hey there, welcome to a ZenFit stretching video. So in my past, I have done a lot of cycling and a lot of running and a lot of sitting at a desk and been active many other ways, playing rugby, so on and so forth. And I've had a back injury that was because of, and hip issues that was because of the forward lean on a bicycle or being in the drop bars or doing time trials and being laid out over the aero bars, running half marathons, training for those marathons, running, sitting down at a desk for 6 to 8 hours a day, all of that stuff. So what I want to do is put together, or show you a protocol that I've used to rehab my back, to open up all the tissue in my hips, to address all of the abnormalities and the inflexibilities that happen when you put a lot of time and effort into like a cycling endeavor, running endeavor, anything like that, sometimes lifting and definitely sitting for long periods of time. But most of the time we never open those tissues back up to give them the ability to expand and contract the way we need to. So today, here we are with a protocol specifically designed for those triathletes, cyclists, runners, and people who sit at a desk. If you do any of those three things and then go ahead and sit at a desk, you need this in your life. So here's something for you. We're going to address the full hip capsule. So from the glutes, this called the TFL. The TFL is where the IT band starts. If you've got IT band issues, you know what that is already. The IT band, although kind of a misnomer, ties into the lateral quadricep, and the lateral hamstring. So when you address the IT band, what we're really addressing is all the musculature that it ties into. The IT band itself isn't going to be rectified. You're not going to reconcile that by addressing it directly. So foam rolling it, I found, doesn't really work very well. What I'm going to show you today will definitely work to open all the tissue up around this area, and especially up and down the psoas and the hip flexors themselves, because the hip flexors are doing a lot of work in a very short range. Think about being on the bicycle. The hip flexors never really go above this, and they don't really go below that angle. So you're working in this very small range of movement. You're not working up here with your knee to your chest, and you're certainly not working here when you're fully extended. So we need to access all of those movements. So the first thing that we're going to do is a couch stretch, which I do on the wall. You can also do it on a couch or on a chair or anything like that. What we're going to do is and you don't have to put your foot up. If it's too difficult to put your foot up because you're so tight, then worry not about that. But if you can put your foot up, then you're going to put your foot up. So we'll do this protocol together. Here we go. Go ahead and find yourself a wall. We're going to start with the left foot up first. The easiest version, I'll walk you through the easiest version to the hardest. The easiest version is just the left foot on the ground, straight back. The right foot is forward. A little bit of an obtuse angle here, because what we're going to do is pull through this heel, this front heel, and get our hips to come into this 90-degree angle. There's a little acute angle here. When I do that, I feel all of the stretch up the front of my leg. I even feel it a little bit in the inside of my leg because that's tight right now. So that's the beginning way of doing this. I'll show you how I do it as I've progressed through time. And you might not want to put your bare foot on the wall because that can be tender. So here we are in this position. I don't know if you can see my hip position. What we want to make sure we're doing is not arching through the back like this. I don't want to arch and artificially put all this stress on my low back. I just want to be tall, but one of the things I want to do, extend my spine, but also make sure that I'm pushing forward. So what I'm doing is taking my left foot, pushing it into the wall slightly, as I'm pulling with my right heel, and pulling my body forward. these are what I call pulses. So I'll call this one pulse. During that pulse, I'm pulling with the right heel, in this case, the right heel, and I'm pushing with the top of the left foot into the wall. Now, this is where using a chair or a couch might be a good idea, because I can tell you that I'm dealing with quite a bit of discomfort on the top of my foot just from the nature of a bumpy wall and bare feet. That's my fault. It is what it is. I don't want you to go through that. So you could use a pillow there or put your foot up on a chair or a couch. So as I push into the wall with the left foot, I'm going to push or pull with the right heel. And this elongates all this tissue. So you might be here and might find that you can't get out of this position, that you're having a trouble pushing up this way. So that's to note. You want to understand that and know that, because you need to kind of quantify how far along you're coming with the stretch. So what I would do is then move away from the wall, put the foot down further on the wall so you have less wind up in this tissue, and then try to get vertical. Vertical is what we're always trying to access in this position. And then we just go through these pulses where I pull with the front heel and push with the left foot. And I would do maybe 15 or 20 of these. We'll do 5 just so I can show you. You can do these on your own time with each foot. And each time I feel the stretch all the way through the top of my leg and even in a little bit to the inside. And just hold this here. If you want to get it more of a stretch, you can take the same knee that's down. You can take that hand and put it above your head and reach a little bit. So this is, I like to do pulses. This is the couch stretch with a pulse. And the pulses create movement. And that movement is what creates the tissue opening up. If we just static stretch and I just get into a stretch and hold it, one of the things that is not happening is the actual musculature isn't going through the movement that it needs to create an opening in the tissue. All musculature, so muscle tissue, is designed to contract and expand. Connective tissue, which is what the IT band is, ligaments, tendons, there's actual connective tissue, that is not meant to expand and contract via the same mechanism as muscle. That's meant to stabilize and to support. So it's meant to connect things, which means it doesn't have this dynamic ability to go apart. It stayed there, and it's strong. So in order to move that and open that up, we need to create movement with our muscles so this connective tissue can sort of rip apart, and not rip, but move apart. It takes a lot of movement to actually do that. Let's go ahead and do the other side. I'm going to get a pillow here so I'm not in so much pain. So the foot goes up. Now, when I put my knee on the ground, I put the top of my knee on the ground, not my kneecap. My kneecap is actually facing the wall. You want to make sure you get the top of the kneecap, which means you really got to get that knee close to the wall. Again, you're going to have to progress through this as time goes on. It's probably not something that a lot of tight hips are going to be able to access right away. So here we are, pressing this top of the right foot into the wall. You can see that as I activate that, and I pull through the left heel. And we'll just do some pulses here. I want to make sure my hips are square as well, so that's the other thing we're focusing on here, is making sure that the hips are square, pushing those hips forward, making sure that they're going together. We just pause at the end range, which is the forward range. 2 seconds, go back, go again, go back, and I count this, that's 1, 2, it's really the 5th one. And the farther I go, the farther down I can feel this hip, this stretch in this right thigh. This thigh is tighter than this thigh. Here's the caveat. As a massage therapist and a personal trainer, I've seen lots of bodies. I have found a correlation with also the injuries in myself, that the side that is tight will often, not all the time, but often cause pain in the other side. When I have pain in my left hip. It comes from my right hip. My right hip is the one that's tight, and it's causing my pelvis to shift a bit and throw pain or a signal of pain to my left side. My left side's fine. It's my right side that's tight. So I usually try to address that 2 to 1. So I'll do a little bit more on the right than I will on the left. So here's our pulses. Hip flexor couch pulses, the couch stretch pulses. Very important to do because we're doing that movement. That movement creates opening in the tissue. Pushing, again, through the top of the right foot into the wall, activates that quad, and then pulling forward activates the hamstring, which is good. So this is the first exercise you do. Now, if you want a variation on this, you can work up to this or add this in. You can just replace it. What I like to do is move my foot, so the front foot, out towards that side. So my left foot's forward. I'm going to move it to the left, but leave this here. And what this will do as I go forward, I'm going to go forward and slightly towards this knee. So in this way, I'm actually getting in the inside of my leg a little bit more. And we're going to address this another way here soon. So this is something that I've adapted as well to find a little bit more of the internal aspect of the groin and the adductor muscles to open those up. So that's something that I would also work into it. But right away, if you just go forward and call that good, you're gonna get what you need out of this. So that's number one. The first exercise, the first stretch. The second one is for the hamstring. Okay, we're going to do 2 hamstring exercises here because a lot of people have tight hamstrings, and the lack of mobility that you have in the hamstrings and the flexibility will cause a lack of movement in the lower back. The lower back will be locked in a certain point because the pelvis cannot move freely because the hamstrings are so tight or taut. If the hip flexors are tight, bear with me, the hip flexors are tight, the hamstrings will actually be taut and they'll feel like they're tight, but it's the hip flexors that are pulling the pelvis forward, which causes let's say the rubber band or the tissue in the back to stretch and be felt that it's tight, but it's actually just taut, which means weak. So we just did the hip flexors. Now we'll go ahead and I'll show you how I stretch my hamstrings. And it's an effective stretch because I'm neutralizing the lower back. So I lay down on the ground, and right now we're going to do the left side so you can see what that looks like. I'm going to take my hands and interlace them behind the knee and pull the knee as close to the body as possible. Again, 10 to 15, maybe 20 pulses. We're going to do these actions again. All the stretching that I do deals with movement, and I found that is the most optimal way to get the best bang for the buck when you're going to put in the time. So we're going to dorsiflex the foot, which means pulling those toes, not pointing them like this, but pulling them up to the knee. So that's dorsiflexion. We're going to dorsiflex. And then I'm going to press my heel to the sky, keeping my thigh as close to my chest as possible. So in 3, 2, 1, I extend as far as I can extend. And this opens up my hamstring because I'm using my quad muscle then to do that motion. So number 2, and what you'll find over time is that you can get pretty far. It's going to open up quite a bit. That's 2. Here's 3. So you just go, I'd like you to do this with me. Lay down on the ground, pull that thigh up there, and then extend the leg. And, it'd be great if you could straighten it. That's healthy. I can't even come close. So this is what we'll work with. 5. We'll do 2 more, and then we'll switch legs quick. 6. Last one here. 7. I try to extend this other leg down so you can get some hip flexor stretch, and then relax. Good job. Let's go ahead and do the other one. Again, 7's not enough. We just did 7. That's not enough. You got to do 15, 20, maybe even more. It's up to you. You can do as many as you like. You might feel sore tomorrow from doing this. I often feel sore when I haven't done it in a while. So dorsiflex the right foot and then extend. And I feel that deep high in the hamstring. 2. Breathing is always important. Just relaxing your breathing. 3. 4. We'll do 3 more. 5. And 2 more, sorry. Can't count. 6. And last one. Hold, extend, hold, and relax. Okay, so that's the first hamstring stretch, and I think that's a pretty impactful hamstring stretch. I found a lot of things. It's helped me a lot with opening up my hamstrings. Obviously, the other one would be just to put your legs straight out and then touch your toes. But You round your lower back pretty easily when you do that, and the one I just showed you on the ground neutralizes your lower back. So we like to neutralize that lower back by and by. So now what we're going to do is do the second hamstring stretch, which also is a TFL stretch and a glute stretch. So your glutes have a lot to do when you're cycling and running up a hill. You're using your glutes quite a bit, and usually we have a power leg where one leg's really tight and strong and the other leg is a little bit more weak and loose. My left leg is my strong leg, so when I'm cycling up a hill, I'll put out a lot more power with the left foot than I will with the right foot. It's just one of those things, so I have to do a lot of one leg pedaling with my right foot to kind of get that up to speed, but my left one gets fatigued quicker, my right one gets a little bit out of balance. So everyone's got a power leg that they're going to access. We have to be aware of that because we're going to have to work on that one. So this next hamstring stretch is going to be done on the wall across the body. So you'll see here, I'm going to be about one leg length away from the wall, and I want my leg to be at about hip height on the wall. Now I don't want to turn all the way over. What I want is my back to be on the ground. So I put my hands out to keep my back on the ground, like so. And you can put a foam roller or a yoga block or a pillow underneath your neck to keep it comfortable. You want a slight bend in this knee. So I'm flattening out my foot on the wall with a slight bend in the knee. The slight bend causes a little bit of shortening of the whole musculature. We're going to extend that and lengthen it. But what I want you to do is focus on energy going outside of your hip. So it goes from your heel and you push your hip back. You push your hip back as you straighten your knee. And what you're going to do is keep your palms up to the sky and press the heel of the foot and the whole foot into the wall as you extend. And when you do this, all from your calf all the way to your hamstring, all the way up the butt, into the hip will open up. It's amazing. There's two ways we can make this a little bit more difficult for ourselves. The first one is to move your foot up towards the waist, closer to the waist of the head. The other one is move the foot closer to the ground. Those are ways to make it more difficult and actually get more of a stretch out of it. When you're starting out, you might want to be a little bit higher depending on where your tightness is, or a little bit lower with your leg. I'm not feeling enough. I'd like to go a little bit higher and a little bit lower, respectively. Higher towards my head and lower towards the ground. And here we go. Let's do 5 and then we'll switch. So ready? Hands are out to the side. Your back is on the ground. You stretch. So you extend the leg. Relax. Extend the leg. Relax. Extend. 3. If I had enough time, I would do probably 20 or 30 of these because I need this bad. You can totally tell. 4. And 5. We'll hold this for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so that's really real. I'm not making that up. That is tight for me. Very good to do this. This is a really impactful stretch. You're going to find it to be a lot of bang for the buck. So right side, we're going to go over. I'm going to go a little bit higher so I can get, you can see here from the camera, I think, I'm right in line with my hip. This would be a good place to start if you're really tight. This would be a good place to work to get untight. And we want to make sure that we're moving that foot down towards the ground as well. So hands back. I can already tell how hard this is for me to twist my hip open, that I'm tight here. I can really feel how much my torso wants to actually stay over here, and it's difficult to open it up. So palms towards the sky, and then let's go ahead and put the heel on the wall. Make sure that the full foot is on the wall, and we'll begin in 3, 2, 1. Extend. Hold it. 1. And sometimes I have to move closer to the wall because I just don't have enough tension. The reason that you get close to the wall is because you want this bend in the knee. The bend in the knee creates a shortness in the tissue. And since I'm fixed at my hip is fixed on the ground and my foot is fixed on the wall, when I extend, only one thing can move, and that's the tissue. My hip will move a little bit back, which is good because it opens up the tissue. But by me doing the action, it opens up the tissue. All the musculature has to fire, which opens up the connective tissue and the fascia, which is what we're after. So that's 3, relax. So I feel this immense amount of stretch and pressure in my glute and my upper hamstring, which is exactly where I feel it when it normally is tight. For last one, we'll hold it for 5 at the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Ooh. Okay, so already my hips feel massively different than what they did before. So that's 3 exercises so far. We've got the hip flexor stretch, the couch stretch with the pulses forward, either with your foot up on the wall or just down on the ground. It does not matter. And then the lying hamstring stretch with your lower back on the ground. You're pulling your thigh up to your chest, and then you're extending your leg as far as you could possibly go. Hold it for a second of 2 or 3. Get it to quiver, and then relax. And then go through cycles of that. I'd say 10 or 15 repetitions, maybe 20, with good slow pauses. The slower you go, the more you're going to get the stretch. The faster you go, the more you're just moving past the stretch. It's like taking a slow walk. When you walk down the street slowly, you see a lot more. Same thing with your body. When you go slow through something, you get a lot more accomplished. And then we've got this stretch where you lay down and you drape one leg over 90 degrees over the hip, and you put the foot up against the wall and extend that knee, always moving, okay? You could stay there for time and just do 1 minute stretch, but that's gonna be very difficult, although it would be very effective. But I like the movement aspect. I've found that works really well. Okay, so we've done the 3. Now we're gonna move on to the last 2 exercises. Okay, so the second to last exercise is a pigeon stretch. Now, the pigeon stretch is an important exercise, especially for cyclists, because our piriformis and deep inside of the hip gets really tight as we're sitting on the saddle and we're pumping those legs thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of times per ride. 60, 80-mile ride, you're thousands of times, tens of thousands, you're pedaling those pedals. So the more powerful you are, the tighter that musculature is going to get. So with the pigeon stretch, there's probably lots of ways that people do this. I like to set this up one of 2 different ways. Depending on how tight the person is or that I am, I like to be aware of how open is the hip to start. Now, I've been doing pigeon stretch for quite a while, so the ability for me to get my ankle, my knee, and my hip on the ground is there. I can do that. I've worked with many people, especially older people, 50, 60, 70 years old, that cannot get this to work because the flexibility in the hip is already gone. It's already deteriorated, which we can get that back. It just takes time. So for them, I have them start a little bit higher. So we start parallel, and I let them drape down and open that up. If you're flexible enough to start with your hip down and your knee down and your ankle on the ground, what we're going to do is work on little actions that push energy through the hip. So if you can take your left leg and put that in the pigeon pose, which would be trying to point your knee straight forward at the same line as your sternum and your nose. The opening of your knee affects the musculature. So the easiest part is to put the knee or the heel close to the leg. That's the easiest one. If we close this right up, we're going to take a lot of the tension off, and it's going to be easier to start. That's how I would say to start. And what I want is both hands on the other side of this left knee, because this really winds up my hip. Now, what I'm going to do, as I sit in this position with my chest as high as possible, is I'm going to move my left hip back. I don't know if you can slightly see that. I'm moving my left hip back on the ground, and while I do that, I'm trying to extend my right leg to open up my right hip with my left hip. So both things are getting worked, getting stretched. My left hip inside of the hip is what's being stretched, and my right hip on the front is being stretched. So it's the opposite of each other. And I'm just trying to press up through this arm is responsible for keeping my torso up. This arm is responsible for trying to wind my hips so I get the stretch in my left thigh. So one of the ways we can incorporate movement here is to relax and then press our right leg into the ground. So this leg into the ground, and try to move my whole hip this way. So if energy was flowing into my knee and then back through my hip and moving this way, that's what I'd be trying to do. And you get a lot of pull in that hip. If you can't feel it, what I would tell you to do is hunt around for tension in your hip and try to feel the bottom of your hip close to the ground, stretching. And if you can find that, that's what you're looking for. Sometimes it's very difficult to watch someone and do what they're doing and feel what they're feeling. So you have to understand that that's what you're feeling for. So you can just relax and then wind it up, hold, push the right leg into the ground, relax, wind it up and hold. And then I like to stay here. This is one of these stretches I actually like to stay in it for 2 or 3 minutes, just static, holding. I don't like to do this. You see a lot of people that do pigeon like this. I don't like that. The reason I don't love it, I do it. It's not always optimal for me. The reason is because when you get upright and start twisting, you put a lot more pressure on the tissue. When you're down, I'm actually shortening all of the tissue on the left side that's tight already. So I don't want that. I want to open that up. I want to expose it to a different motor pattern that it never gets. You get this motor pattern a lot, especially if you're a triathlete or doing time trials. You're hitting the bars all the time. So this is not foreign. This is not a foreign pattern. We need to access foreign patterns because foreign motor patterns are going to be the motor patterns that open up our tissue because they're not used to being there. So let's go ahead and switch legs again. I showed you last time with my left leg how to go from the bottom. This is how we're going to go from the top. So you start with your knee directly underneath your butt, if you can bend your knee like this. And then all I'm going to do is straighten my left leg and then fall to the side. And then inch this leg out, and to the degree that I can inch this leg out and scoop my hip down to the ground, I will open up that musculature. So it's really about, you could honestly go from the top and push down, touch, and relax. And keep doing that. And when it gets easier, you move this forward. And you just push your hip backwards. So push the energy towards your hip, towards the ground. You get there, you try to square up your left hip. So square up your hips. And that's one. So there's 2 different avenues to get Pigeon to really activate for you. And you just keep going and touch the ground, relax, come back up. And I'm going to open this up as it gets more open. Oh, it's sticky. So this is definitely working. It's good. I feel my right hip is so much tighter than my left. So this is Pigeon number 2. This is the variation number 2, where you go from the top and you push that hip down and open this leg up to get more tension. So I'm actually holding it here so it doesn't move, making myself get down and have more tension, trying to square up my hips. Again, having the upper body up. So that's the second to last. The last exercise we're going to do here for the hips has to do with the adductors, and this is just one version of it. It's on the ground. There is a version that you could do standing up. Let me show you that really quick, although we're not going to go through it. You can play around with it if you'd like. So if you're trying to open up your adductors, the insides of your legs, which is usually great for people who are bow-legged, so you have a varus knee which goes out and the tension through the inside is really tight, so that will help as well. Also, with people who have IT band issues, a lot of the time the IT band is not the thing that's tight. The inside of the leg is the thing that's tight, and it's putting pressure on the IT band because the IT band is being taut, stretched. So we need to actually strengthen the IT band, not stretch in the IT band. We need to strengthen it, or the muscles around it that connect to it, and we need stretch on the inside, the opposite side of the IT band. So something to think about if you've got some IT band issues. So this is the variation. You don't have to do this, but this is how to take what I'm about to show you on the ground and sort of activate it standing. So go nice and wide, and then you just sort of bend over, trying to have a very straight back, and go up and down. And these are the same pulses. So you just stay down there for a second, come up here for a second, and you just work your way down farther and work your way up higher. But what I've found for the best bang for the buck is this sort of variation on a frog stretch. So you put your knees out as wide as you can, and you'll know when you can't do that anymore when you feel an immense amount of pain in the inside of your legs, where your adductors are. Then we want these lower legs. The easier variation is to bring your lower legs together. Harder variation is to get them to be parallel. So right now you can see that they're parallel, right? The lower leg is parallel to the other lower leg. And what I'm going to do is go down on the ground as if I'm in the aero bars and push my hips backwards and try to get my tailbone to the sky. So I'm lifting that up as I push back, and then I come forward, relax, push back, relax. Let's do 5 of these so you can do this with me. 3, go back. 4, last one we're going to hold for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, from here, that was good. You don't need to go any farther, but from here, what I like to do sometimes is do circles. So I just move my spine in a circle. You can see that's coming from my shoulders, but it makes my hips go about 1 inch to the left when I go here to the left, and then when I go back around to the circle, I throw my right hip a little bit to the left, and this really activates, do both directions, counterclockwise and clockwise. This really activates a lot of the muscular tissue deep inside of the hip joint because I'm moving laterally. Now I'm moving in a different plane of motion other than just forward and backwards. I'm moving side to side, which is helpful in getting more tissue. So doing circles like that is very important for activating more of the tissue deep inside of the hip. So honestly, those 5 exercises are all you need to start a major rehabilitation effort on your tight hips. This should help with knee pain, not guaranteed. Could help with knee pain, could help with lower back pain. It could even help with neck pain because the hips are largely contributing to neck pain, cervical pain. What's going on in the hips and the lumbar often mirror itself in the neck. And you can find this, you can ask chiropractors about this. It's called the Lovett Brothers syndrome or Lovett Brothers effect. Anyway, so that's 5 exercises that you can do. Again, to reiterate very quickly, we have the hip flexor stretch, the couch stretch up on the wall like this. Can also be done with your foot flat on the ground. Okay, so we've got this one, pressing the right foot back, pulling the left foot forward. Okay, we're going to do that with both sides. Pausing at the end range here, that's a pulse, going back. Pausing at the end range here, that's a pulse. You can play with the angle to put this out. I've even played with the angle of pulling my foot in towards my other foot to wind up a different part of the front leg, so you can play around with your positioning there. Then we've got the lying leg stretch, hamstring on the ground, pulling the thigh up and extending. 1, 2. We've got that hamstring stretch. Then we've got the hamstring lateral leg IT band stretch, so TFL in the glutes as well as the hamstring. Putting ourselves close to the wall. See this angle I have here? I don't know what you would call that. Probably about a 165-degree angle. This would be 180. This is 165. This is 90. Okay, so we're going boom. Oh, extending there. So we've got that hamstring glute TFL stretch. Then we've got pigeon right here, either from the top down or from the bottom around, this way. Okay, and then we've got the frog variation stretch, pushing back and circling around. Those are 5 activating stretches that you can do to help your hips. The next exercise is going to be the actual strengthening of a weak muscle that will help knee pain, hip pain, and back pain for cyclists and runners. So, on to the exercise itself.